But as far as making sure that a solution stays stable, but as far as making sure that a solution stays stable, but as far as making sure that a solution stays stable, so I said in the first two videos of this playlist that the main reason that I wanted to go ahead and tackle this and do a deep dive, lots of recipes, answer all the questions, was because I was getting a lot of questions on older videos regarding bath melts and also within the Discord and, within DMs and emails. And that's all true. But also over the holiday season, I fell in love with the making of macarons again. I used to have a huge obsession with them. And this year, I had the brand new kitchen with all the ovens and all the counter space. So, therefore, all of the room to make tons and tons of batches of these adorable little cookies. And while I was making them and playing with all the different flavor profiles, I was really wanting to reformulate my bath melts anyway, because that's how I present them, is in the macaron form. And so I think it must just be bath melts on all of our brains for one reason or another. Probably the biggest reason is going to be because it's the winter time and our skin is dry and we're looking for something with a little bit more oomph to add to our bath, you know? And so I definitely wanted to get this playlist out right away because it seems like we are all, thinking about that bath melt thing. Or I'm just thinking about cookies in general because I like food. But today we are going to be doing a third recipe in the bath melt series, and I will tell you more about it in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for week 9 of year 3 and video 3 of a bath melt playlist that I'm just kind of dropping all at the same time. Now, you were brand new to this channel and you were coming here for all things, bath melt. Well, lucky you. Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here and putting it all in one playlist. So that's cool. But the reason for putting it all in one playlist is because I started doing this, near the end of year 2, as far as doing deep dives on one particular subject or whatever, and putting it all at the same time. Because while on this channel we always do focus on the chemistry of soap, of cosmetics, and really how stuff works in a meaningful way and sort of demystifying the soap and cosmetics making process, I have a tendency to sort of ramble in all of my other videos, and while I give all the great information within the video, you have to actually be paying attention. And so I figure with this way, it's a way to help focus my brain and also an easy reference point for you to look at a whole bunch of different recipes, their performance, all the things, one place, easy to come back and reference if you need something, all of the jazz. So today, what we are going to be doing is a third recipe in the bath melt line, and realistically, it's the recipe that I have been using for a very long time. So unlike the first two recipes, we will not be using an emulsifying wax. Now, remember, I showed you in both of those videos, emulsifying wax is made of a sort of alcohol. So acetyl, acetyl, there are a lot of emulsifiers actually out there that can contribute to an e-wax. I feel like I've done a deep dive playlist on emulsifiers alone. And if I haven't, let me know. If you're interested, definitely let me know. And I'm happy to do that because it's actually kind of a wild world and that might need to be sort of streamlined too. But anyway, an emulsifying wax is essentially made up of 2 emulsifiers. In the case of the product that I used for this, and the most readily accessible e-wax that we have for our industry, we're looking at acetyl or acetyl alcohol and a poly, either a 20, a 40, a 60, or an 80. different conversations entirely. For this particular recipe, we are going to be eliminating the e-wax and replacing it with just poly 80. Now, polysorbates are in and of themselves not an emulsifier. They serve as a really great co-emulsifier, and in bath products, especially when you have baking soda and citric acid in, they also serve as a really great bubbler, which is great because then you don't have to put in the SLSA and all of the other things. Makes it easy peasy. But as far as making sure that a solution stays stable, they're not great on their own. They really do need something else. But for this particular, product, we don't really need an emulsifier. We know that if we melt down butters, solid butters, and oils and let them just cool down, they're just going to go ahead and go back into their original, solid state anyway. So an emulsifier isn't really needed. However, an emulsifier is needed to really help disperse into the water so you don't end up with like the pockets of oil hanging out, or micas if you like to use micas in your products, which I do. So this particular recipe, again, no cetyl alcohol, no e-wax, but we will be using poly 80 as well as different ratios of the cocoa butter and the shea butter, and also different ratios of the baking soda and the citric acid. Let's get to the video. We can talk about this recipe, its pros, its cons, and all the things. Okay, so today we are going to look at my original recipe for bath melts / bath truffles and talk about why I do it the way that I do. Now, as you can see, I have more dry ingredients than I do, butters and, the polysorbate, so liquid ingredients, technically. And I've done it this way for a very long time, just because I really do think a bath melt and a bath truffle should first and foremost be like bath bomb based, right? You want it to fizz out. You want that chemical reaction to exist in the water so it fizzes and disperses throughout the entirety of the water. But you also, of course, want to add your skin-loving butters and oils. In this case, I only do butters because I do want a nice firm balm at the end of all of it. And I have found that the inclusion of the dry ingredients definitely helps for longevity of the actual bath melt, as well as stability, as well as, again, making sure that it melts quickly and disperses reasonably evenly throughout the tub. Now, the dispersion, through the bath water is coming from realistically two things. One, the fizzy liftoff, so the reaction between the baking soda and the citric acid once it touches water. So that's definitely helping because it's kind of a violent little reaction there, but also the polysorbates. Now, remember when I said that polysorbates are going to be good as a co-emulsifier in all recipes. It's never something that you would ever consider a proper emulsifier, a standalone emulsifier. But in this instance, we don't necessarily need it to be an emulsifier. We need it to serve, I guess, as an emulsifier-ish in the bathtub during the actual reaction. And so what that is going to be accomplishing is breaking up any oil pockets, and also, with the micas, making sure that we don't end up with a weird mica ring around the tub or any sort of weird mica floaties, which is pretty important for somebody if you are wanting to use micas instead of lakes or dyes or whatnot in your bath products. And I really love micas, so polysorbate is a good alternative for people who, don't do the, the custom polysorbate 80 hack, which is a different conversation entirely. One of the downsides of this recipe is that, as you can see, it does the separation thing like we saw in the second recipe, because you have, that baking soda and that citric acid, and it's not liking moving with the butters. So you do end up with like the look of separation. But again, remember, this is a weird recipe, like bath melts are a very strange beast in and of themselves. So it's not like with soap when you are seeing the separation and going, oh no, that's not going to be a stable solution. There's really not a solution per se with something like this. But that is a downside because it does get a little strange and it also gets a little messy, as you can see. So that is definitely a downside of the added dry ingredients. Okay, now on to the reveal of my original recipe. The second problem with these is in order to actually unmold them cleanly, especially in something like this mold that has kind of some detail around the bottom part of it, the feet for the macarons, is you really have to freeze these. Like freeze them. Not just get them cold until they're firm-ish, literally absolutely frozen in order to get them out cleanly, because they do have the tendency to break. And because of that, every single soapprentice I have ever had, the ones that I have currently, they don't really like making the batharons. It's a very stressful process for them. You see how it's cracking there? It's not a good time. It's not like really frozen enough to actually unmold, which is not the end of the world. You can take these and you can remelt them, put them back in the freezer, and they should work. But that is definitely a limitation of this particular recipe, so I think we can do better. And there it is, recipe number 3 in the bath melt playlist. And for this, yeah, the Poly 80 is going to be really good, again, to help disperse the colors and the oils through the actual water, which is going to be aided by that baking soda and that citric acid, because that reaction, what's going to cause a great dispersion as well. Also help them from clumping and looking weird, the micas or the oils on top of the water. And while I'm not 100% convinced that acetyl alcohol is really needed in a product like this, because it's a conditioning agent as well as being an emulsifier, right? And we don't really need that extra conditioning when we have the shea butter and the cocoa butter doing that for us. I do think it actually does help with the pouring quite a bit. And it makes them a little bit less fragile when you are taking them out of the container. And by a little bit, I mean way less fragile. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I definitely did file that away when seeing just the differences right next to each other, literally made within the same hour of, life. And yeah, so the sterile is good for that. This is a serviceable recipe, though. It's a little bit finicky. One of the downsides of this is because it has the baking soda and the citric acid, you can't use your blues and your greens unless you're going into your dyes. So there's that, something to keep in mind. And also, as far as remeltability is concerned, you can do, but realistically, it becomes like all of those solid sugar scrub recipes that you see out there, including one from me from a long time ago, I believe, wherein you're trying to mix oil into something that really you're not meant to mix oil into, and so it doesn't like it. It wants to separate. It gets to be kind of a pain. And that is something that the soapprentices have always hated about my original bath melt recipe. A little bit scary with, getting everything into the mold quickly, getting everything pressed down and nice and firmed, fully frozen before you take them out of the mold, so we don't have any breaking or cracking. And for most simple bath melts, right, if you're doing like a heart or a circle or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be completely fine. But for things like this, like I'm making it into cookies, it's a more intricate design. Yeah, that can be a little bit stressful for sure. But this recipe does check all the boxes for me as far as usability. It has the right amount of oils and butters to actually add to a full tub. It's not going to leave an oil slick. It's going to moisturize your skin without leaving a film because of that inclusion of the baking soda and the citric acid. So for me, this recipe has been a workhorse for, I don't know, like 8 years. I really love this one. But again, looking at this recipe versus the 2 that I made yesterday and taking the stress levels of the soapprentices in mind, I decided to reformulate mine. So that's what you guys are going to be getting tomorrow. My new recipe for my bath melts, my macarons, as well as a test of all 4 of the recipes. So all 4 of the cookies that we have done for this in their full watery glory to see how they actually perform. So that will be tomorrow's video. I hope you guys had a good time today. You learned some stuff. You found it interesting. I certainly do find all of this interesting because, that's how my brain works. So, and I know that I have like-minded people whose brains also work like this within the Sudsers. So Sudsers, thank you. I hope you guys are getting some good information from all of this for sure. You guys got a Project Soapway challenge out, so make sure to pay attention to that and get cracking with that because you've got work. But if you are doing some bath melts as well, let me know which recipe you're liking more so far, for sure. Immediately following this, we'll be dropping the 4th recipe and the 4th video, so you don't have to wait till tomorrow for all of it. That's coming right away. So look for that. For those of you who aren't subscribed, again, hi, I'm Mrs. Soap and Clay. subscribe, do the things. It keeps me motivated to keep doing videos, really. And the Batharones are back in stock at soapandclay.com if anybody's interested in doing that. But I'm out of here for this video, and I will see you all again right away, but also tomorrow for another round of soapy fun. Bye.